Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to thank the powers be in this theater, Sheila Nevins, for allowing us to do this, and Michael for introducing me, and you all for coming. It's very strange for me to see my image on a film, as I'm sure you understand. What I chose to do today is really talk a little bit about why I do what I do, a little bit about art in general, and specifically about a couple of paintings, which I chose because I think that they are perhaps a summary of a lot of what I believe about painting and my concerns subjectively about why I do what I do. I chose not to have slides simply from a very personal point of view. Most of the time that I look at slides, I fall asleep. And also the fact that slides tend to be much more interesting than the actual painting by virtue of being shown in light. So they're a little bit of glorious lies. Having said that, I'd like to maybe begin by talking a little bit about why I got into what I'm doing and where. Basically, being the only child in the city of Parma that Michael was talking about gave me a lot of time by myself. And both of my parents and my grandfather, with whom we lived, were very much interested in the arts, although none of them were artists. My father was a pharmacist, and my mother never painted until she became ill at 70, and subsequently did 240 canvases, beginning at 70 years old with a stroke. And it was a fantastic effort. Anyway, so I did an awful lot of copying of artists. My parents would bring home little postcards, mostly of Impressionists, but also Peter Paul Rubens and some details of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel and some Botticelli, a Titian, which was the most difficult thing that I ever tried as a child, just because I didn't know what glazes meant. And Titian is all about that. And a lot of the Impressionists, Van Gogh, Toulouse-Lautrec, Degas, Gauguin, a lot of Gauguins, Monet, Manet, et cetera, Pissarro, as well as some 20th century Italian sort of semi-obscure characters like Carlo Carrà. So I did literally hundreds of little copies, most of which I left in Italy. I still have some here. That got me into a kind of a lifelong commitment to a certain degree, a certain interest that served one very, very, very important point in my life, which is it taught me, or these wonderful people that I copied taught me how to see and not just how to look, which is a very important part of what art is all about. Just as much as if you're into music, you know how important it is to listen, not just to hear. So as I came to the United States when I was 13 and kept going on to high school and so on, and learned to survive in the streets of Bridgeport, which is where we moved to, I always ended up drawing and sort of express certain feelings that I had about people and about situations via the visual medium, mostly of drawing, although every once in a while I would paint also, until finally I ended up going to art school, and I went to Silvermine College of Art for 3 years, which was a small experimental art school, which was very good, and I was very lucky to study with some great people. I just want to qualify something. Michael, in his introduction, said that I worked with Fellini, Bertolucci, and so on. To a certain degree, what happened was that with Bertolucci I grew up with, he was a little bit older than I, and his brother went to school with me, and we used to go to films together all the time when I was a kid. So I knew him, and we sort of kept up with each other a little bit afterwards. I never actually worked on anything with him other than knowing him and having but explored films with him as a kid. And so whenever I went to see films that he made, I sort of understood them from a certain point of view, which was very intimate, in virtue of the remembrance that I had of my time with him as a kid. Fellini owned some of my pieces, actually one of my pieces, a big piece that he bought when I was going to school in Milan. And Dali I went to visit a number of times, both in New York and at his house. But The knowing of people who have dedicated their life to making art, I found to be an extremely important thing because, you know, one is starstruck until one meets the actual person. And then you realize that, you know, they get up in the morning, they go to the bathroom just like you do. And so to a certain degree, that knowing, that absolute reality brings possibilities to who you are as well, which is important. George de Chirico, which I mentioned in the film, is someone who was extremely important for me because of an attitude that I got from him, which stuck in my work up to today. And that attitude was beyond the mystery and the conundrum that I talked about in this brief film. Is also the fact that he explored a way to present an image from various points of views within the same panel, within the same painting, so that he managed to organize his vision according to time and space. As you enter the painting, you view a building from one point. As you travel through that point, you suddenly switch and you see something else from a different perspective. What that does is that it takes something that is absolutely static and two-dimensionally flat, with no time, no space involved, just a flat pictorial surface, and it transmutes it, transforms it, metamorphosizes it into this wonderful world of motion and therefore emotion. And it renders the viewer a participant in this exploration of the imagery.